Is a special study this morning of Torah because we're studying receiving Torah. So it's a wonderful thing when we're studying as our Parsha, as our words of Torah, our story, our narrative about that moment of revelation, of the entry into this relationship with this text. So this relationship is, crazy old. At least 2,400 years old, closer probably to 3,000 in terms of the origins of these stories and the lives that were the context for these stories to have the shape that they do. So 3,000 years we've been telling this story. It is just, when you really take a minute to think about that, it's like, what? Wow. Especially for us in America, where things are mostly new. And even stuff that's old is new. When we really try to get our heads around, I know whenever I'm in Israel, it's like that feeling of what? There's a word in Hebrew, Disneyizatzia, which means the Disneyfication of something. Disneyizatzia. And of course, it's a word that could only come, from something Americans do. But I always have to it takes me a few days, always in Israel, to realize that this is not Epcot. This is not Disneyizatzia. This is not a set, right? That's been created. I'm not at Universal Studios. This is for real. That rock is for real. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. So that's just, for me, it's always right when we're at this point of revelation in our history, it's like, wow, that's a long time ago. Our people had an experience that we are still bound by, in really important, mystical, wonderful, magical ways. So we're going to look at the text this morning, and then I want to study with you a little bit from Michael Lerner's book. I gave you a sheet a while ago from that, a few weeks ago, from his book, Jewish Renewal. He has one of the best explications of a progressive relationship to the idea of revelation that I have ever read. He has one of the best ways of wedding both our progressive liberal values, and that means a liberal interpretation of all of this in our tradition, wedding that to an absolute sense of being obligated, right? Of feeling called into a relationship with the divine that is represented for us by these texts. And so the power of both of those is what compels me in my life. And so I want to share him and his teaching with you. There's lots that we could do today, obviously. You can imagine the rabbis spend a serious amount of time in the Midrash dealing with Sinai, dealing with revelation, dealing with what that means, dealing with what happened for the people, what happened for each person, what about this word, what about the letter of that word. It goes on and on and on in a glorious cascade of imaginative and deep thinking. There's no way in 45 minutes to an hour we can get close. So I'm actually toying with the idea of, I want your opinion, of offering a class on the Midrash around Revelation. All the traditions around that first aleph of the first commandment, Anochi. There are whole books entitled Anochi, right? Go on the internet, type in Anochi. There's 3 or 4 just in the last several years published called Anochi. It's that big, a thing that you say Anochi in certain circles and everybody knows what you're talking about. And all it means is I. All it means. It means I, right? Spoken by God in the first commandment. I am Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, your God. Anochi Adonai. Why Anochi? Why not Ani? Why not, right? So, and then there's all of these amazing midrashim about why the Ten Commandments begins with an aleph, which is a silent letter. So actually the Ten Commandments starts in silence. It's fantastic what's out there. So I think that maybe the next class I offer is a text class on the midrashim around Revelation. All right, so having said that, Bert Kleinman drew my attention to chapter 19, verse 14, which I am assuming is what's in Kol HaNeshama. So hebcal.org begins a little earlier, but I think it's better to begin further on or we'll never get to Revelation. Exodus 19. 19. So actually, I do want to back up to Actually, go to 19:7.
4:13.
Moses came.
Ken, Ruvain.
So, shall I read?
So you want to read? Does everybody got it?
Yeah.
Everybody has it? 19:7.
Page 413.
All right. So Moshe's just had an encounter with his father-in-law Yitro, where Yitro chastises Moses for hearing all the cases of the people and says, "This is not good for you." But lots of the commentary focuses on the next line. He says, "This is not good for you, and it's not good for the people." So there's lots about why is Yitro saying to Moshe, "You can't hear all the cases yourself." Obviously, it's not good for Moshe. He's going to burn out, obviously. And his relationship can't be fantastic at home if he's hearing every case of the people. But it's not good for the people either. So, right, that's not a good model of leadership for the people. So he's just had that conversation. He listens to his father-in-law. He does what he says. And that is how the judicial system evolves in Israel, in the ancient Israelite narrative, is that the judicial system is set up so that there are courts for smaller cases, and Moshe is the Supreme Court. Then, immediately after that, he says goodbye to his father-in-law, who goes home to Midian. And then chapter 19 begins with the third month after the Israelites had left Egypt, and God calls to Moshe, saying, we're going to have something special happen now. And that in this process, God is going to give them a covenant to keep, and you will be my treasured possession among all the peoples, God says. You shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Here's what you're going to say to Israel. So the language is covenant. The language in Hebrew is what? What's covenant in Hebrew? Brit. So this idea of Brit was the governing idea in the ancient Near East at this time. It makes perfect sense that our narrative is placed in the context of a Brit. You either had Brit between equals, and then it describes what each party has to do to live into that Brit, or you have the vassal suzerain treaty or Brit, which is that I have all the power and I tell you what to do and how to live into the covenant, and if you break it, there are consequences.
What did you call that? Vassal suzerain?
Yes, so the conquering suzerain, the conquering king, would cut a covenant with the conquered people. The vassal king, usually on behalf of the people, signs a covenant, and the copy of that covenant is put in the shrine and is kept so that kind of it has all the powers around it that sets into being about if somebody breaks it. And so that is normative for our time and our place.
Covenant is a strange translation because the English word covenant comes, I believe, from the French covenant. Venant means coming. Covenant is like a co-coming, a coming together, which you don't have the sense at all.
Up, down, right. So that is much closer to equal parties.
Yeah.
Although, in some ways, it's a midrash on the French, a midrash, is that for God, it is, in our tradition, for God, we understand that to mean God pulling the people closer, right? That the covenant pulls them into a significant and special relationship with God that God doesn't have with the rest of the world.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. And so that's why it says, that's why it says, but it says here in chapter 19, right, that indeed all the earth is mine, right? So God is not saying, I'm only going to be God for you, the way the Egyptians did, right? Ra's the God for the Egyptians, Baal's the God for somebody else. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is not saying, I'm the God for you and let everybody else do what they want to do. It's, I'm the God of all peoples, of everybody, of the entire earth. The whole earth belongs to me and all its peoples. But I'm going to pull you into a special covenantal relationship.
It's a very human concept to think God is above. I mean, where is up when the world's spinning? I mean, so that's a human concept. Obviously, God is everywhere.
Well, and if you've ever been in the Sinai and you look up, it is very clear why this story is set on a mountain. It is quite something, because the mountains are huge mountains, I'm talking huge mountains. And that unbelievable blue sky against that red rock, that's huge. And you are nothing when you are in that. You are nothing. So it is absolutely clear that, of course, if you're going to put God somewhere in that setting, it's going to be at the top of that
Drama,
mountain.
the pathos.
Absolutely. 100%.
You can get a sense of that driving out into the desert here. Some of the desert mountains, even near Palm Springs, and then past there, and you look up in the mountains. It's similar.
It is quite something. Quite something. And the mountains of Israel don't even, only by a lot does it even come close to the Sinai. I once said if I am ever terminal, take me to a beach in the Sinai and bring me umbrella drinks, and so that's where I want to go. That's where I want to be. All right, so we are looking at verse 7. Reuben is going to read for us.
Moses came, or on page 413, Moses came and summoned the elders of the people and put before them all that Adonai had commanded him. All the people answered as one, saying, all that Adonai has spoken we will do. And Moses brought back the people's words to Adonai, and Adonai said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud in order that the people may hear when I speak with you, and so trust you ever after. Then Moses reported the people's words to Adonai, and Adonai said to Moses, go to the people and warn them to stay pure today and tomorrow. Let them wash their clothes. Let them be ready for the third day, for on the third day Adonai will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. You shall set bounds for the people round about, saying, beware of going up the mountain or touching the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death without being touched, by being either stoned or shot, beast or person, a trespasser.
Are you now reading the commentary?
No.
No? Where am I then?
4:14.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Reuben. Thank you. Sorry.
It's interesting. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up on the mountain.
All right. So, one of the most famous lines in all of rabbinic literature happens here. Moshe summons the elders, right? The zkenim, the people charged with leadership of the people are the elders, right? In this setting, how Levi should only be in our time, that it was understood that the elders are the ones with the most prestige. They are the ones with the most experience, the most wisdom. So they were the most respected of the people. So it is the elders who Moshe addresses and tells them what God has said, right? You're going to come and you're going to have this new arrangement with me. And so they bring the word of the people back to Moshe. And the people famously here in verse 8 say, Kol asher diber Adonai, everything that God has said, na'aseh, we will do. Right? So this is a famous line. Its partner line is the more famous one. Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do it and we will hear it. Meaning they agreed before they heard what the terms were. This is the merit of Israel forever in the imagination of the rabbis. That merits them a lot of forbearance later, right? Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do it. We agree. Now tell us the terms. So the midrash is that God went to every other people of the world and said, I want to make you my treasured possession, my am segula, my treasured people. And they said, Nishma, let us hear it, right? And that only Israel, the last of the last, God comes to Israel last, and Israel says, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do it, then let us hear it.
How many people would God to be in Sinai?
I don't know. A lot.
Rabbi, does it say we will hear somewhere else? And is that another? Because here it's...
Yeah, another place it says Na'aseh v'nishma.
That also means
But it's kind of this idea of Na'aseh, we will do it. Everything God has said, we will do it. And another place says Na'aseh v'nishma.
Asking what is it.
Right, we will do it without asking what it is.
Could that also mean we'll do it, and then the doing will talk to us? And we'll learn from doing it?
A beautiful midrash. Beautiful. Write it down. Write it down. You got to write it down. We got to collect these. Ooh, we should do that. We should collect those and have a KI book of midrash.
In your spare time.
Write it down. All right, that is a great idea. We're gonna work on
What
that.
did you say, Bert? I'll write it down.
Right, so that Na'aseh Nishma means if we do it, Nishma, we will hear something from that. We will learn something from that. If we do it first, the doing will teach us.
I always like in this section too, God saying, just give me a blank check. It's like, well, I'll fill it in. No, just give it to me and I will fill it in. And so we have to kind of here. And,
Right.
And we did it. Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah.
Why is it thought that other people were offered the covenant?
Because the rabbis want to make us special. And so it's more special.
There's no evidence. I mean, that's just a made up.
Yeah, it's midrash. Midrash is all the rabbi's imagination. All of it. All right. Inspired, divinely inspired imagination, perhaps. I don't want to denigrate anything. All right. So Moshe, so they say everything God has said we will do, right? And so God says to Moshe, I will come to you in a thick cloud, right? So God's going to have a visually manifested, concentrated part of God's essence visible to the people. And then in order that the people may hear when I speak with you and so trust ever after. So this is going to be the thing that proves once and for all Moshe's unquestioned leadership and official prophet of God status. As if, right? We're dealing with the Jewish people. But it's supposed to be that. And Moshe reported the people's words to God. So it gets very confusing, right? The chronology of this gets very messy and very confusing. And so the rabbis love to say, "Ein mukdam u'me'achar b'Torah." There's no early and late in Torah. It's not supposed to be a sequence. You can't expect to read it linearly. It's all of a piece. But that's kind of a way to deal with the fact that it's written so that it's all kind of like this.
Why is this chronologically off, though? It seems perfectly...
Because Moshe brought back the people's words to God, and God says to Moshe, I'll come to you in a thick cloud. Then Moses reported the people's words to God. He just did that. When did he go back to the people and say something about a thick cloud? To take something back to God, right? That it gets very choppy and very confusing. And my teacher of blessed memory, Tikva Freimer-Kensky, said that this was the way in the ancient world that you, through literary means, communicated that this is an ineffable experience. Right? So how do you, in a literary format, communicate that you can't really talk about this? You make it kind of mangled. Does that make sense? You can't tell this story the way you tell other stories. I picked up the car, then I got it washed, then I went to the grocery store, got the bags out of the trunk, walked through the door, went to the produce section. That's normal life. Start to tell somebody about a dream you had last night, right? And it's like, well, I don't know, there was kind of this thing, and then it turned into a thing that wasn't really that, but I knew it was, but somehow, so it was my sister, but it wasn't. So it's tangled. And that is part of why the story is told this way, is to communicate how big an event this is, that words and linear, talking about it doesn't really do it justice, doesn't capture it. I bought that. I thought that was a good explanation. All right. So Moshe says, go to the people and warn them to stay pure today and tomorrow. So they need to bathe, presumably. They're going to do mikvah. Let them wash their clothes, right? So they need to ritually purify themselves and their garments, and let them be ready for the third day. Why 3 days? It's like, why not? Three's a number of completion. There's the unit, the singular, then there's the duality of the pair. The first number past that is 3. So the first number past the singularity of 1 or the duality of 2 is 3.
That's just like...
Huh?
That's just the granddad. Well, it's the triality of 3. I mean, you could say the first number after the trio is 4. So that's why...
But that's already 2 pairs.
Okay.
You've got one, you've got two, right,
Yeah.
as a pair, and
Okay.
that's what you've got for the rest of the first thing past that. I mean, it's one
Right.
theory, but that across the board, 3 is a powerful number in every culture. It's why do you think there's a Holy Trinity? 3 is a very powerful number, past the unit and the binary, and
It's also the number of commitment.
the number of commitment. Tell me about that.
You say something 3 times and you really mean it. That's a deal.
Why? Why 3?
I assume for the same reason, back to, but again, this is a commitment situation.
Absolutely. So 3 days, because this is going to be a very serious commitment. So they needed a window of enough time for it to be serious time for them to consider, time for them to have time to take it back. When God comes down on that mountain, God wants to know that they've had 3 days to think about this. When Abraham takes Yitzchak up the mountain, how long did that take?
3 days.
3 days.
When you're trying to get your kid into the car, I'm going to count 2.
1, 2, elbow. Right, my kid used to arch, not wanting to go to the car seat. 1, 2, and then the elbow's coming. So
This doesn't have to do with baseball.
I was imagining that would be how I might respond if I were to get really frustrated.
Does this have to do with baseball?
This does not.
3 strikes, you're out?
See, now you're going to see it everywhere. Now you're going to see 3 everywhere, right? So exactly. So you get 3 tries, and then you're out. Triumvirate. All of it is about the power of the number 3. So here we go. They have 3 days, and then God's going to come down.
We're on the triennial cycle as well.
It's going to be everywhere, I'm telling you. All right, so you shall set bounds around the mountain, because God is going to come down on the mountain. What's that going to do to the mountain?
Make it holy.
It's going to make it holy. It's going to supercharge the mountain. Nuclear. And it makes the mountain, therefore, taboo. You can't touch it. It belongs to God. You can't touch it. So once God comes down on the mountain, the whole thing, right, is now powerized.
Electrified.
Thank you, electrified. And so the people are not allowed to touch it. And in the ancient world, you touch something that's taboo, you're done, because it spreads.
Right.
You'll spread the danger. It's treason. So we still punish treason with capital punishment. Not saying it's right. I'm saying we still, in the modern world, have an understanding of treasonous behavior is so dangerous. You have to have the ultimate consequence, or people, because it's that serious. So beware of going up the mountain or touching the border of it, and whoever touches it, that's treason. They have to be eliminated. No hand shall touch it, right? That person, because now that's spreading the contact. And this idea, we still have a vestige of this idea with the burial. When we shovel earth in the grave, do we hand the shovel off? We do not. We put the shovel back in the dirt. You don't want to pass it. You don't want to hand that off. So it's that we still have a remnant of this idea of not contaminates, but it can collect. It communicates it from one person to another. And there's things you don't want to communicate. Like think of the flu. It's that feeling of you don't want to pass it. So you have to be careful. And I only say the flu because it's so in my consciousness about, so many people are sick, so many kids are sick, that it's just like everybody's just kind of like aware all of a sudden of our boundaries and what we pass to each other and how, right? So whether it doesn't matter if it's a person or animal, it's now touch something taboo, it's got to be eliminated.
This says shot.
Yeah.
Is the translation here. Shot with what?
Yeah.
I'm assuming bow and arrow.
Not a gun.
Presumably not. Now, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. I don't know what happened. Right? Possible. All right. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up the mountain. Do you see the word for ram's horn here? Anybody? Bimshoch ha Yovel. What's Yovel? What do we usually think of when we think of Yovel? Jubilee. Yovel is the Hebrew word for
Jubilee.
Yovel, Jubilee. Originally Yovel probably meant a ram or, a sheep, but not a sheep. So sheep don't have horns. Sorry, I just cracked myself up. All right, so whatever. What has a horn? A ram. What else has a horn?
Unicorn.
Okay, or a unicorn. It either meant a unicorn or
Make you feel better.
thank you, or a ram.
Steer.
And then it came to mean just the horn of that animal. And then that horn was blown to indicate the Jubilee. So originally what meant a ram then comes to mean letting the slaves go free. Okay. Moshe, somebody read it 14.
Moses came down from the mountain to the people and warned the people to stay pure, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, "Be ready for the third day. The men among you shall not go near a woman."
Go on.
On the third day, as morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountain, and a very loud blast of the horn. And all the people who were in the camp trembled. Moses led the people out of the camp toward God, and they took their places at the foot of the mountain.
All right, so Moshe comes down and says, you have to stay pure, right? So they launder their clothes, they do all those things, and speaking to the men, you shall not go near a woman, right? So that they shall not go into a state of ritual impurity from having ejaculation. So don't have intercourse. All right, this is a different state. You're supposed to be in a different state. On the third day, as morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountain, a very loud blast of the shofar, and all the people who were in the camp appropriately trembled. So all of the atmospheric disturbances you could imagine, right? And in a place like Sinai, you get thunder and lightning, and it's not like Georgia. Thunder and lightning in Georgia is like thunder and lightning. Yeah, we love it. But it's a normative thing. Thunder and lightning in the Sinai in the mountains would have been right? Freaky. And so all of these atmospheric disturbances, a very dense cloud, and a seriously loud shofar blast. The people are appropriately, this is shock and awe. This is the original shock and awe. They had the experience that was designed to have happen of shock and awe. That we designed for over there was, right, you do something that really takes them immediately out of their normative state and puts them in a state of absolute awe and terror on some level. So Moshe leads the people out of the camp towards the mountain, right? So they got to have mixed feelings about that. And they took their places at the foot of the mountain. And the rabbis, I mean, it's just fabulous. The Hebrew, it's so glorious. Because they're betachtit hahar. Tachat hahar. They're at the bottom of the mountain, right? So your English says at the foot of the mountain. But tachat, what's this? Your tuchas. It's your tachat. Because where is it in relation to you?
It's your bottom. What you sit in.
Where is it in relation to you? Under you. Because tachat in Hebrew means under. So the rabbis say the people are literally tachat hahar. They're under the mountain. Now, of course, it means they're at the bottom of the mountain. But they use this as a wonderful invitation to a midrash that says God lifted Mount Sinai, put it over the people, and said,
You got a choice.
you have a choice. Would you like to enter a special covenant with me or not? And the people are tachat hahar. They are under the mountain, and they say, sure. Whatever you Naaseh v'nishma. Right? Yes. Of course, count us in. So the Hebrew, you just can't get it unless you're reading some of this in Hebrew. It's just delicious.
Ostensibly, God didn't lift the mountain on any of the other people's.
Right, exactly. Maybe God had lost all patience with humanity at that point.
A few weeks ago, we talked about Adam and Eve inferring that they were probably, with all the time they had on their hands, were doing more than looking at each other. Nothing was really said one way or the other.
Right.
Labeling sex. But here, it's like the first time it's putting like a damper or something negative to do with having sex?
So there are times where we are not supposed to be engaged in activities that will pull us out of a certain state. So we're in a state of otherness. So there's times where sex is forbidden, according to Jewish tradition, because we're in a state, there's a state of otherness involved. And so one of the things you do is refrain. On Yom Kippur, we refrain from having sex. Doesn't mean sex is bad. You don't have sex on Yom Kippur. You're supposed to be in a state of otherness. It's a different state. And part of making that state different and keeping it different is to not engage in certain behaviors.
Well, another state would be praying, but they don't say anything.
Because that's rabbinic. That's different. That's much later.
When I read it, it kind of bothered me because it doesn't say, like, don't have sex. It says stay away from a woman, and maybe that started a lot of things that Orthodox men have about, not hearing women's voices perhaps, and a lot of prohibitions about touching and shaking hands and hugging. Maybe that all stemmed from right here, the fear of women.
So I would actually argue the other way, which is men's fear of women is what caused this line to be here.
Okay.
Do you know, like, I don't think ever I've seen halacha point back to that. Now, are those same things that make men weird about women's stuff? Would that cause this line to be written this way? Probably. When they trace back to Nigiyah and stuff like that, it's about men's, I think, fear of women's sexual power to attract and draw them. It's not women that are the problem. Men know it's their control that's the problem. Now, what they want to do is project that, as usual, onto women.
Right.
But so this line is another indicator that that's always been going on, but they really don't hearken back usually to this.
Doesn't that go back to Adam and Eve?
In terms
Man's
of
fear of woman.
Oh, yeah, because who wrote that story, right? So, yeah. All right, so where are we? So Sinai is in smoke, right? Because God had come down in fire. So just think of every visual and atmospheric disturbance you can imagine, right? And there's so much smoke, it's like the smoke of an oven, of a kiln. In the ancient world, those would have been pretty smoky. And the whole mountain trembled. So you can just imagine it's vibrating, right? There's so much going on. The whole ground is and remember, Israel's a place of earthquakes. Most of the things destroyed in Israel were destroyed by earthquake. So you feel earthquakes in Israel, right? So this is not an uncommon thing for them to think about the world shaking, but it's terrifying when it does. And y'all know that, living here.
They have earthquake alerts in Israel?
Oh, yeah. When they have time. All right. Because sometimes it happens before there's enough warning. All right, where are we? 19? So the blare of the shofar got louder and louder, and as Moshe spoke, God answers Moshe in thunder. Interesting. God answers bikol is what it says in the Hebrew, right? So it's a little more amorphous in the Hebrew. God answers with a voice in Hebrew. It translated here as thunder. Would all yours say thunder? Mm-hmm. Interesting. So Adonai comes. Oh wait, have we read this?
No.
All right, somebody read it. 20.
Adonai came down upon Mount Sinai, on the top of the mountain. And Adonai called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Adonai said to Moses, "Go down, warn the people not to break through to Adonai to gaze, lest many of them perish. The priests also who come near Adonai must stay pure, lest Adonai break out against them." But Moses said to Adonai, "The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, 'Set bounds about the mountain and sanctify it.'" So Adonai said to him, "Go down and come back together with Aaron, but let not the priests or the people break through to come up to Adonai, lest God break out against them." And Moses went down to the people and spoke to them.
All right, so again, we're going to get some crazy up-down stuff. Go down, come up, but he's down. How can he called up when he's already up from being down? It gets all very confusing.
And again, Moses is correcting
Is
God.
Moses-
Hey, you forgot about this?
Hey, what do you mean don't come up? You tell them to come up. You just said it's supercharged, and they're going to die. What?
He
What?
allows Aaron to come up.
What?
That's
He makes an
okay.
exception.
When
Right.
Moses went up with Aaron, was that when he got the 10 Commandments?
Correct.
Where we are.
Correct. So there's going to be 3 designated places on the mountain. The top is where God is. Only Moshe can go there. Then there's a level that Moshe, Aaron, and maybe the priest, I forget, can be at. And then there's another one where the people are, right? So what does this remind us of with God's concentrated presence at the top? The Mishkan, the tabernacle. You're going to have God's concentrated presence in the Holy of Holies. Then you're going to have only the high priest can go into the one place. Then only the priest can go into the next level. And then there's the outer courtyard, right, where the Levites are. Like, we get the same tripartite division of Sinai, of course, as we will the tabernacle. Absolutely. 3. So we're going to get that same division. So let's go to... So Moshe goes to tell the people, right, like, don't come up here, right? So who are these priests? Yeah, it's like, how'd that happen? Aren't the priests in the book of Leviticus told to be the priests? Yeah? Take Levites, make them priests, make Aaron, and right? What's this?
Time travel.
Time travel. So, en mukdam u'me'achar b'Torah, there's no early and late in Torah, is one exegetical way to get around it. Possibly, this was referring to the very, very, very earliest manifestation of priesthood in Israel, which was the firstborn. The firstborn in each family was sacred, right? We read that last week, right? Belongs to God because of the slaying of the firstborn of Egypt, right? And all of the firstborn of the trees, of the fruit, of everything belongs to God, as do your firstborn. Right? Remember, we have to have Pidyon Haben, the redemption of the firstborn. So possibly this is referring to a time where the firstborn were still sacralized. Huh? Right. Bikurim, the firsts, right? They're sacred. The firsts are off limits. They belong to God. Possibly
Aaron asked to be brought up.
here.
Yep.
Yep.
What's he going to do?
Hang out with Moses. So we have 2 traditions, Mushite and Aaronid. We have the Mushite clans and the Aaronid clans in early Israel. So wherever you see Moshe and Aaron, the Aaronid clans have added that text to the Mushite clans.
But if they were
Telling.
brothers, how come there are 2 clans developed?
So we have to always remember there's lived history and mythic history. And so 2 clans who are in the formation of early Israel and are rivals for cultic power and control, tell a story retrojecting their ancestors as having been brothers so that they can move forward together. All right. So the priest. So we're not sure. All right. So now we're going to see that God is going to speak. And what time are we at?
10:30.
10:30. So we're going to spend a few minutes with the 10 Commandments, and the Revelation class will deal more with the Midrash around that because it's a huge body of literature. All right, let's go to, traditionally, when this is read in the synagogue, we stand for the reading of the 10 Commandments. Originally, it was read every Shabbat, and people stood. Then the rabbis got a little concerned that the 10 Commandments were taking too big a place, that they became too important, in that it somehow meant you could ignore other parts of the Torah. And so it was making them nervous how central a place the Decalogue was playing, and so they toned down all of the ritual around the reading of the Decalogue.
When did that happen?
I don't know. So some things I don't even know how I know them. So I wouldn't even know where to look it up. But all right. So chapter 20. Somebody begin.
God spoke all these words, saying, I, Adonai, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods besides me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image, or any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth.
You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, your God, Adonai, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generations of those who reject me, but showing kindness to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not swear falsely by the name of your God Adonai, for Adonai will not clear one who swears falsely by God's name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of your God Adonai. You shall not do any work, you, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them, and then rested on the seventh day. Therefore Adonai blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure on the land that your God Adonai is assigning to you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor male nor female slave, nor ox, nor ass, nor anything that is your neighbor's. All the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the blare of the horn, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. You speak to us, they said to Moses, and we will obey. But let not God speak to us, lest we die. Moses answered the people, Be not afraid, for God has come only in order to test you, and in order that the fear of God may be ever with you, so that you do not go astray. So the people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the thick cloud where God was.
All right. So we have this rendering of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 statements. They actually can result in 13 commandments. These are not called the 10 commandments in Hebrew, right? These are called the 10 speakings, the 10 utterances. There's not 10 commandments necessarily here, so that gets kvetched, but you can make 13 commandments out of this. So lots of creative work goes into making 10 commandments out of this text and out of the text in Deuteronomy. It's never called in Hebrew the 10 commandments. Mitzvah is something else. Mitzvah is what you do or don't do. This is not called that. These are not called mitzvot. These are called dibrot, speakings, sayings. Because God speaks, and already, Anochi Adonai, the rabbis understand to be like, a powerful, powerful statement by God. It's not a commandment, exactly. It's not a mitzvah, but it's still a serious part of the 10 utterances. It begins with Anochi. I am Yud-Heh Vav-Heh Elohecha, your God, Asher Hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mi Beit Avadim, who took you out of Egypt from the house of slavery. In any suzerain vassal treaty, it begins with, I am Queen Amy, who rescued you from that horrible famine, and that is why I have the authority to call you in. I conquered you on that day, and so I spared your little ones, right? And so I spared your lives, so you owe me loyalty. That is how the treaties open. So God, here's the radical new Israelite innovation on that idea, that it's not a king making this covenant with a conquered people. It is the King of Kings, right? An invisible God making a covenant with a people it rescued. Not conquered, but rescued. That is a crazy, crazy, radical new idea in the ancient world. And if you even got anything close to something like that in the ancient Near East, it would only have been with the clergy. It would have been with the priests. They had a revelation. In the ancient Near East, the priests did not tell the people what they did. It was secret what they did. It wasn't shared with the people. The people didn't come into the sanctuaries of the ancient Near East. They brought their offerings and the priests took them in. The people didn't read. The people writing those texts about what we do and all the rituals that we do and were the priests. This is a radical new idea in the world. That the covenant is made between the deity and the entire people. Women included. Children included. In a society that easily denigrated often women and children, everybody was part of the theophany. Everybody witnessed the theophany, the appearance of the God, and everybody heard the words and understood what the terms were to live into right relationship with that deity. That is unheard of. And it changed the world. This changed the world.
And did they begin reading too?
And this is part of the reason it's radical, is everybody needed to access in order to, if all of us are supposed to live into the covenant, all of us have to access what that means. So they were all encouraged to study the law. Unheard of in the ancient world. It is a radical new innovation in how to think about a people's relationship to the divine and then to the accessibility, the democratization of the covenant. The priests used to do it on behalf of the peoples. Now, the entire people is charged with understanding the terms. You have to be educated to understand the terms. If I know the terms and you don't, and you bring me stuff so that you can make sure I'm going to take care of you in relationship to the deity, there's a serious, serious power structure, isn't it? But if you know the terms, what does that enable you to do with me? Debate. Are you sure?
Keep each other honest.
Are you sure, High Priestess Amy, that you're supposed to take that to the left? As I recall, Leviticus says take it to the right. Right. So you can challenge the priesthood and their efficacy and their fitness to be priests if you know the terms.
In the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, it shows Abraham challenges God.
Yeah.
And argues with God.
Yeah.
Holds God to task.
Yeah.
And if you could do that, certainly the priest.
Right. Certainly it's a people who gets it that, nobody has exclusive anything. Yeah.
What did the rabbis say about whether the order of the utterances, the amount of words in them, keeping the Sabbath, kind of went on and on about, whereas you shall not murder, one sentence and moving on. Was there equal weight to them because they're all said by Adonai?
So the tradition would say yes, they have equal weight because and it says we as human beings can never know the weight of any law of Torah. That's why only certain ones have the consequence of death. Most mitzvot do not have a consequence associated with them. Why? So that we shouldn't start to figure out which one's more important than another. So the rabbis have always said only God knows which ones are more important than another, and that's why they started to back off when the Decalogue got too important, right? So even these shouldn't be held above. You see your neighbor's ox fallen over, you're supposed to pick it up. That's as important, say the rabbis, as these, right? We don't get to decide. They are all from God. They are all important. You don't get to pick. Now, having said that, of course, there's a lot of discussion about the wording and exactly. Gam v'gam. All right. So another thing I love about this is that it says that all the people, like each person, saw and heard, and the rabbis have there's a beautiful mystical teaching that says, and had one of the people been missing, revelation would have been incomplete. that it took every single person's different apprehension of God for a complete revelation. That every one of them was necessary because each of them saw and heard it differently. And that is how revelation is full and complete, is that all of our different perspectives are needed to even begin to understand the fullness of revelation.
So at this point, the priests lost their concept by the people of being omnipotent.
Yes.
Say that?
Yes. Correct.
Don't the rabbis go farther and say that the revelation continues today? Notain HaTorah?
Of course. Of course. So this day is used instead of on that day. Right? On this day, God gives the Torah, says Torah, meaning every day. That the voice is always going out from Sinai, and the question always is, are we listening?
Rabbi, I missed something along here. I was able to follow pretty well, but then the word revelation, where did that suddenly come in? What is being revealed here?
These laws and how to live into right relationship with God is what's being revealed to the people. They weren't told not to murder before. They weren't told, if you want to be in right relationship to me, don't kill each other. They only know what the Egyptians did, right? They don't know any of this, according to our story. They don't know any of this yet. They're being told, you are now going to have a covenanted relationship with me, and that means if you agree, mountain over the head, if you agree, then here's what it's going to mean for you forever. And your descendants. This is what it's going to mean. This is how you behave to be my special people, a nation of priests.
Yeah, well, I understand covenant, I understand contract, but why the word revelation?
It's an English word. It's not used in Hebrew.
What is used?
It's not used in Hebrew. It's Ma'amad Har Sinai, Matan Torah, the giving of teaching, the giving of Torah, Matan Torah. Revelation is an English word that it's about. This is what was revealed to the people, but it's not even really a Hebrew concept.
It has a lot of Christian connotations because English is a Christian language.
So that word is just. I think it's what it means is something's being revealed to them that they didn't know before. It's a divine revelation, but it's not how we talk about it Jewishly. It's Matan Torah. It's the giving of Torah. All right, Sinai. Code. I'm serious. Like the rabbis will say, Sinai. Right. It happened. They learned it at Sinai. How do we know that a microwave oven? Blah blah blah. Sinai. All of it came down at Sinai, and then it took generations for that knowledge to come out. But both the written and the oral Torah were given Sinai.
Learned I also
Me Sinai.
I thank you. This is where revelation is.
Yeah.
It didn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so the preamble, here's why I get to call you into this arrangement, because I took you out of slavery. You shall have no other Elohim acherim al panai, no other gods in my face. Right? And so that means also you won't make a pesel. You won't make a sculptured image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above or the earth below, la 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 la, and you will not bow down and serve them, for I am Elkanah. What does your translation say? I am a what kind of God? Impassioned God. Love that. Other translations will say I am a jealous God. Because kin'ah is the emotion that one is entitled to when one has an exclusive relationship with someone else and that person steps out of that exclusive relationship. I am entitled to kin'ah. Yes? So I have an exclusive relationship with you. You betray that. You step out of that. I'm entitled to kin'ah. So God says, I will experience kin'ah if you step out of this special relationship and go betray me, right? If you're unfaithful to me by going and doing that intimate thing called worship, right, of somebody else. something else. And I want to say it was something else because I think the whole temptation to idolatry is not gone. I have this discussion with the kids, right, who get these Parashiyot, and we're talking about the Ten Commandments, and I say to them, why can't we make a sculptured image? Why not? Why can't we make a statue of God? What's wrong with that? So one kid answered me recently, loved it, said, well, because I can't say if I make an image of God that that's the only way to image God. What if your image of God is something else? Then what I've said is, here's what God looks like, then I've left you out, because you may imagine God looks like something different.
Future rap.
Yes.
Beautiful, right? Why are we not allowed to make an image? Right? Ooh, it's another one. Oh, this is good. That's what I'm going to publish. So it's like, there's a book there. I know someday there's a book there. So
It's very reconstruction.
it is very reconstructions, right? That we edit a KI Midrash collection. Yeah. So I love that, right? Because it's not that Pesel, that image, isn't an image of God. It might be, but it's one image of God. There's nothing. So I don't even think the prohibition is you're not allowed to have an image of God. That's not the point. I don't think. It's that you can't say this is the image of God. And if you start doing that, you get so narrow into which part of God. That's idolatry. Splitting off a part of the whole and making it the whole thing is idolatry. And what else do we put ahead of these values and ethics? Everything we put ahead of them is idolatry. So I ask the kids, what do you think that is today? Right? And they have no problem filling in those answers. Celebrities, football stars, money, luxury, power, wealth, technology, entertainment, right? We put often all of that ahead of our understandings of how it is we're supposed to have a right relationship with God and with each other. So half of these commandments have to do with God, half of them have to do with each other. How we treat each other, what we're supposed to do and not do as regards each other. That means how we behave towards one another directly impacts our relationship with God. New, radical, amazing idea. There's been ethics and values in other cultures. I'm not arguing there wasn't. To make that the terms of right relationship with God is that I'm not allowed to treat you badly? That's revolutionary, right? Reconstructionism at its finest, right? Reconstructing whatever's around in radically important new ways. All right, so,
Rabbi,
sir.
Visiting the sins of the parents upon
Yeah.
their children.
Yeah. It's worthy of conversation. What I will say in short about it is that there was an understanding of collectivity, right? That we were a collective. We are communal, and we are therefore, we bring on consequences not only for ourselves, but for generations after. And there was an understanding that could go on endlessly. And so this was actually a shortening of that. So I know it sounds horrible, because to us that's horrible. But in a context where that was understood to be the case, it could be like forever and ever. And this comes to say it won't be forever and ever, right? That there is a collectivity of when we behave badly. There is. If we don't turn the ship about climate change, it will go to the 4th and 5th generation that our children will suffer. Let's be clear. What we do as a collective has implications generations down the line. And if you love me, though, it will be the 1000th generation, right? Behaving rightly is so much more impactful and powerful than, right? So it was meant to be a shortening of the bad and a lengthening of the good. All right, I want to share with you a few words of Rabbi Lerner, because I think sometimes, and Bert Kleinman always keeps me honest about this, sometimes in placing things in its context, in arguing with the literal translation, in arguing against orthodoxy, right, we can push it to a place where it feels like we don't take, or I don't take it seriously in terms of this being Torah being, our stories being holy, sacred, binding. And Rabbi Lerner does a really good job of explicating for me like where I am in all of this. Because you hear me say a lot of times there's no evidence for, this, there's no evidence for that, it probably never happened. But here's what he says. Go to something happened, right? He opens his whole discussion of Revelation with something happened. 100%. All of us who engage with this can say something happened. 100%. My life is governed by the fact that I know something happened. Now, drop down. We don't know, is it this? Yet what it records, we're about 4 or 5 sentences down, two or three words in. Yet what it records, meaning Torah, buried in the midst of a people trying to recount its own development, is event monumental and transparently true. That at some point in our history as a people, we got it. We together received and accepted a message that we have a special obligation to live in accord with a transcendent view of the world. This getting it was not simply the enlightenment of a single soul or a small group of special enlightened gurus, philosophers, artists, wise men or women, spiritual seers, or mystics. The remarkable claim of Torah is that an entire people got it at the same time. And in a sense, all stood at Sinai together. And as the Midrash wisely adds, not only those living at that historical moment, but also all future generations were at Sinai. So that all of us heard the message together, and all of us can remember how we heard it. Go to the next page, the next column to your right, the paragraph that begins the very way, yes? The very way that this story has been told from generation to generation is good evidence that something happened. And that something happened to an entire people, not just to a few people. But there's another way to look at the story. That the something that happened was the telling itself. The very fact that this kind of story has been told, has taken root, and has held the moral and spiritual imagination of a people for 2,400 years is itself the story of a revelation. The ability of a people to grasp, hold, imaginatively transform, and yet remain loyal to a story of liberation may be the very thing that happened. I mean, I get chill bumps. It's like, this to me is Sinai calling now.
Play is the thing.
Yes. The telling. Magid. It is our telling that is the very thing itself. So drop down at the bottom of the page. If some variant of this account were true, meaning of that this is how it happened and it got written by this person and by that person and those things were hobbled together and it happened over time. If some variant of this account were true, would it undermine our claim that something happened? Not at all. Not only would we still maintain that the Moses group got it, and that event was Sinai, but also we would say that the other tribes who accepted the telling of Moses' story got it too. This process might have taken place over the course of 500 or 800 years, but eventually a very large number of people got it. Go to the next side, to the paragraph that starts, something happened. Something happened. And it shook the Jewish people very deeply. It turned us into a group that would play a vanguard role for much of subsequent history. Out of the experience of Exodus and Sinai would emerge we're on page 79, would emerge a small group of people whose descendants would take these insights and spin off other religious traditions, including Christianity and Islam, and later psychoanalysis, Marxism, and other liberatory traditions of the modern world. Something happened to make this group conceive of itself in such a way that it would make a contribution to the world out of proportion to its numbers. A contribution that would build upon the realization that the oppression and evil in the world could be overcome. So for our purposes, let us call whatever happened the revelation at Sinai.